Welcome to Voices from the Field podcast presented by Extra Inning Softball, where the stories are real, the conversations are honest, and the game goes way beyond the field. We're bringing you insight, inspiration, and all things softball from the people shaping the sport. Today, we have a very special guest, my father, Burt Lively. He has a lot of experience when it comes to travel softball recruiting, travel baseball. I have an older brother who played college baseball. I played college softball, obviously, and then so is my sister in college now. So a lot of knowledge to be shared from him about the recruiting process, travel ball in general, all the things when it comes to, putting your kids in sports and all that. I know I talk about him all the time and the things that he did that I liked, maybe not things he did that I didn't like, but it all came together obviously and worked out exactly the way it was supposed to. So with that being said, my father is here today. Carrie, if you want to go ahead and start off, any question, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for joining us. I've heard about the myth and the legend for at least the last 6 months, so it's nice to meet you. But what I would love to do is I think one of the things that I kind of envision and why I'm with Extra Inning right now, because it's not just like the ranking for me. I go, I want to do different things. So for me, what I love to do is I'm trying to help create, and we are Extra Inning are trying to do like a one-stop shop for that 8 to 18U crowd, not necessarily your Power 4 or the elite travel organization, but a one-stop place that people could go. There's a lawyer sitting in, his little 7-year-old comes into the room and says, Daddy, I want to play softball. And, he is like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. So things of fundraising, things of recruiting, things of, where to buy uniforms or what are the best organizations or, how do you just everything. So with that being said, and I want to gear this more towards recruiting a little bit later, but just even in the beginning, what is some of the biggest advice after going it through? And we're talking softball, obviously, right now, that you could give a parent out there. What do you wish you would have known before you started with Katie and then going through with Presley? And maybe what do you think, man, this was the best thing I ever did that you could share with these parents?
Thanks for having me, first of all. I would tell people just to chill out. I mean, that's the biggest thing that I saw all the way, and I was a complete lunatic starting out with my son. I got a lot better with Katie, and Presley was even different. But you just got to chill out. I mean, this is in the early stages when you get started, have fun. Just enjoy watching your kids play. That's the loss. So many people take it so seriously. They get started in all-stars and then they go and then all of a sudden the recruiting process starts and people just lose their minds. Just chill out. It's going to be okay. There are so many programs out there that I can promise you this. If your kid has the want to and the desire to play at the next level, I promise you there's a place for her to play. It may not be in the SEC, but I'm going to tell you there is a place for her to play. And
Amen.
so just chill out. And it doesn't matter. They're all important places. Whether your kid plays JUCO ball, whether they play NAIA ball, whether they play D1, D2, D3, it does not matter. It is a big deal. There's less than 1% of athletes end up getting the opportunity to play at the next level, period. But there's so many places, they'll find a place, but just chill out.
That is the best piece of advice I've ever heard a parent willing to share. And I think Burt, that comes with you and I in wisdom. The older you get, the more you look back at it, see it. Like, I remember how I was with my first kid as opposed to how I was with Macy. And my first kid was like, you were never like that, so I
Right.
totally hear that. And I think the thing that what you said to me, and I'm not a grandparent yet. I don't know. I don't think you are either. But that's the thing that I always said to parents is, but the best thing that a grandparent does is they love everything their kid does, their grandchild does, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. They just love watching them play. And so I've always said that is like, make the first thing you say to your child when they walk off the field, whether they hit the game-winning home run or drop the ball that allowed the run to beat their team, is I just love watching you play, because at the end of the day, it is a game. It truly is a game. And that goes for boys or girls at this point. I mean, I don't
100%.
if they're a baseball player or a softball player. I think that is how we as parents allow our kids to understand that their identity is not in the game and it is not who they are. It's just what they do. And I think that is such incredible advice to hear and one that I would scream from the mountaintops. So I'm so glad to hear another parent with the wisdom who's already been there and done that share. And I think that's golden. Absolutely golden.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know I've mentioned a few times on the podcast or talking to people is one of the biggest things that I love that my parents both did, really more my dad because he was more involved in my athletic career, is he really I always would say this. He was really big on it was our journey and it was our thing. The minute he had to beg me to go to practice. The minute that he had to tell me, hey, you need to go hit is the day that will be done. And I know, Carrie, you said the same thing about Macy. And so I definitely would say, like, I can answer the question for you, Carrie, when it came to like the best thing that he ever did from my perspective as an athlete was to not push me to where it's like, you have to go practice, you have to go pitch. I think sometimes he would be mad at me because I wasn't used to pitch. And I would want to go pitch every day and he'd be like, oh, I got to go catch again. Like it was the opposite. But I think that really built not only my work ethic, my brother and my sister in the sense of it's your journey, it's your thing. Like, I'm not going to force you to do anything you don't want to do. I think he's even told me, he's like, if you don't want to go practice, fine, we just won't go. Like, that's fine, and as a teenage girl, I'm like, well, no, that's not what I meant. Like, I wanted you to be like, now you have to go. But then I would be like, I don't want to go to practice or I don't want to do this. And he's like, fine, then we won't. And I was like, oh, well, like, never mind. I guess I want to go. So I don't want to tell my coach I don't want to go to practice. So that's definitely something that I've seen, that I didn't realize other athletes didn't have. And then I want to ask you, Dad, I kind of know your answer, but I think it's a really important thing to touch on. Is the decision to put me with a coach that wasn't you? Because now there's different situations. Carrie was a Division I Power 5 coach. You have, a lot more credibility when it comes to coaching softball. Obviously, Dad did not play softball. He was a football guy. So I'm not saying every situation, every person has to, not coach their kid. But in this situation, it worked out the way it did. And I think that was one of the best things he did for me as well, is putting me with women coaches that played the sport and knew a lot more than he did when it came to not only the game, but the recruiting process, college softball, all the things. And so, Dad, I want to ask you, like, what went into that decision to, transition me from you coaching me and you to finding coaches that played the sport and had that knowledge? Like, what made you decide that? 'Cause I'm sure you wanted to coach me to some extent, because that is, as a parent, something that's probably very special. So I just want to know, like, from your perspective, someone's watching that may not know, should I coach my kid? Should I not? Like, what went into that decision?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, it goes back, I'm a sales guy. And so one of my biggest influencers in my sales career was a gentleman that I used to work for. And his name was John Welburn. He owned a car dealership over in Rome, Georgia, my hometown. And he told me one time, he said, Burt, he said, if you want to go buy a boat, you don't go to a car salesman. And that really stuck with me, because what that meant was really you go to an expert. You're not gonna you're gonna go to an expert to get things done, and that really stuck with me. And when it comes to softball and baseball too, I just really had limited knowledge. And but the thing that parents have a tough time doing is just giving up control, because they want control of what's going on, where they're playing, where their kids playing, and things like that. And it's tough for people to just give up control. It wasn't hard for me, because I knew as you and your brother and now your sister were developing, I knew that you had a love for the game and you really wanted to work, because as you said, we said, hey, look, I don't care if you do it or not, but if you're going to do it, then you're going to take lessons and you're going to go to practice, and I'm not going to force you to do that. And not one of y'all ever, and you may get a complaint here and there, but not one of y'all ever didn't go to practice, didn't go to a lesson or anything like that. And I knew I wasn't the expert, and I knew that I had to go find somebody. I knew, for instance, that you wanted more than what I could give. And so I went and found somebody that knew it. I went and found, I wanted a boat, and I went to a boat salesman. I found somebody to do it. And that's what we did. And we built the program out that way. And I did the same thing with Robbie in baseball. And I did the same thing with Presley, even to a greater extent. I think that probably a funny story. Presley never played for a parent that had a kid on the team until she was in high school. And one of her high school coaches actually had a daughter that was still in high school.
Oh, that's
And
a
that's the
blessing.
first time. That's the first time she ever stepped on a ball field where a dad, and she didn't know how to handle it. She was like, "This is weird." Um, but the thing is, there are other sports aren't like baseball and softball. If you play volleyball, for instance, most clubs that you go play for, there's not a parent out there coaching. There is somebody, like y'all. I mean, y'all are both, former athletes. Y'all, sort of, are a little bit different in that regard. But, in other sports, soccer, you don't play for dads in soccer. You go play with a professional soccer coach. So it's very unique in this specific instance that dads are even on the field at all, because other sports don't treat it that way. And I think that it really makes a big difference because it trains you. You know what? The fact is when you get to the next level, odds are you're not going to have a parent that's going to be coaching that team. And so this is going to be 100% up to you. And that's another part that I think, and Carrie, you hit it on the head. I mean, one thing I learned about playing football is a lot of things that we did on the football field, that we did in the training room, that we did in the weight room, had nothing to do with football. It had everything to do with life. And so sports, you are not, you're whatever, you're an athlete. If you're not, the softball player is not who you are. That's just something you do. So what's more important in all of sports is to learn about life through sports. And so I knew that I couldn't teach that to my kids. I needed somebody who was an expert at doing that. And that's why you turned out the way you did, and Robbie turned out the way he did, and Presley turned out the way she did, is because y'all were taught by people who not only knew the game, but they were teaching you more about life. They were good role models too, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so you learn more about life by playing with these people and for these people than I could have ever done for you on the field.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say that because, I lived almost the exact opposite, being that I did coach in the Power 4 or whatever it was, Power 20 back then. I don't know what it was back then, but I coached at that level, and I always wanted really to coach my kid in the beginning, and then I wanted to turn her over.
Right.
Unfortunately, where we were, every time we tried that, it was a disaster. I was like, whoa, we're not learning the game. And they were parents of other kids. So it was like we could never find that. Right. So, my kid sat me down and said, I only want to play for you right now. So she's like, I'm learning. So, I did. I coached and I would do all that. And then she grew up on my college field, so she got pushed around and beat up by college kids and stuff like that. But I think the thing that made me, because my daughter doesn't play for me now, and she didn't play for me this last year. We moved up and I said, go, it's time to go. It's time to go. But would have even done it a year earlier, but I had committed to the other kids that were on that team going through the recruiting process of making sure they go. I think that what pains me the most is I miss not being on the field with her because I just love, we had that way of being able to talk. What pains me the most is during her career growing up, I always used her as the example. Like I was hard on her. I mean, I always knew if I was harder on her and used her as the example, that no other parent or other athlete could ever say, well, you treat your daughter differently.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I sure do. And matter of fact, we were talking about this the other day. She goes, I always hear about you talking on the podcast and how people will say, oh, daddy ball and mommy ball. She's like, yeah, mommy ball my rear end. She's like, mommy ball bought me more sprints, bought me getting there earlier and staying later and, having to be the example. She's like, I could just look at you different and you jumped me. She goes, and it wasn't jumping me as your daughter. You jumped me as a player. And she goes, and like, we laugh about it. Like, I'm like, you will never call me mom on the field. I'm not your mom on the field. I'm your coach.
Right.
So laugh at 10 years old, she started calling me Coach Mom. That's what I became. Coach Mom, and so literally when the decision came and we left last fall, I said, I got all of you guys offers. The rest of it's on your own. I'm always here. I'll always love you, but I want to be mom.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear somebody say, hey, will you get me the water? I need water. And me not have to say like, I could pay attention to my kid for the last year and a half of her career and just literally coach her, but coach her off the field, you know, or go play. And I thought it was really important you played for somebody else other than me before she went to college. You know, I
You're in a very unique position. That was one thing that I really wanted for Katie is I wanted her to be taught by people who actually played the game and coached the game. And you have that unique experience. It's pretty funny because one of Robbie's, my son, one of his coaches, a very well known coach in the Southeast. I won't name him here, but it's pretty interesting because he has a younger son that's now I think he's 9 or 10 years old, and he's always told me he said to your point he's like he said I want him to play for me and me only so that he can learn the fundamentals of the game, and I know what he's going to be taught. And he said, but when he gets to middle school and high school, he said, buddy, I'm gonna have to tell you, you're gonna have to come out of retirement because you're going to coach him. And I was like,
I love that.
and I was like, hold on a minute. I don't know anything about it. He said, but here's the great thing. He said, you don't have to. You just got to be out there because I just don't want to be. I want him to understand that. And so he's already warned me. He said, look, he said, in a couple of years, he said, Preston will be done playing. It's going to be time for you to come back. And I'm going to need you to do that because he was he's in the exact same boat that you are.
Yeah.
He's coached at a very high level. He played at a very high level. But he's already identified.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what literally like every coach that ended up recruiting my kid kept saying, she's a great player. Don't get me wrong, but her softball IQ is off the charts. And I'm like, it's because she's sitting next to me in the dugout when we're coaching. She's hearing the college kids talk. And I have this vision that I can remember where I was like, and it happened with both my son and my daughter because I coached my son. I was the first female baseball coach in Arkansas. So I made a lot of people angry. And now I stopped once it went to kid pitch because I'm like, I know nothing about pitching. I'm out. I've gotten you as far as I'm going to get you. But I can remember very specifically it happened with my son once and it happened with my daughter when a kid came up to me, a student athlete at the college level said, I don't understand what I'm doing hitting. And out of the mouths of babes, both of them to the T. And it was a little bit different story, but they're like, you've got to get your hands through the ball. Like you're pulling off the ball every time you hit. And I turned and I looked at her and I was like, hush your mouth.
Like she's like, what, 5?
And the athlete kind of looked at her and then the athlete walked off. She's like, I hear you say it to her all the time. It's not that hard. I'm like, okay, you're 10. That's a college athlete. You're not having that conversation. And to this day, that athlete came back to me and she said, that hit harder for me hearing your 10-year-old daughter say it. Like, duh, big red truck. How many times? You know, and she's like, if the ball's doing the same thing and you're being told the same thing, you haven't fixed the same thing. You know, so it was so incredible to experience that.
I got to interject there too, because when I was just listening to you and Katie, I'm sure that you've recognized this over time. You know, when I chose, I chose what we're going to do with Katie and who we were going to do it with Katie, with people who have played the game. And Katie, if you, the thing that I find interesting about Carrie is if you listen to how she talks about players, she calls them athletes. And that's what your coach did. Your coach never referred to any of y'all as softball players or anything. She always referred to you as athletes. And it was always, so some of the verbiage that you, and that's, once again, I go back to the boat versus car analogy. See, your experience puts you sort of in a different category, in my opinion, Carrie, because in some of the words that you're saying are I mean, that's what I heard. The exact words, the exact verbiage, everything that you're saying, and that you've experienced is exactly what Katie's coaches. That not only were they similar in what you're talking about, but they're also using the exact same words.
Yes, absolutely. I love that part of it. Let's switch a little bit more and gear it towards 2027 because that's approaching fast. September 1 date, all that fabulous stuff. Talk to me, just some advice as a parent. What you wish somebody would have told you before you went it through the first one, or some of the lessons that you learned through the process of it to make it to where, and I know it changes because the rules change and all that kind of stuff. What are some golden nuggets you can share for the class of 2027 parents?
Very, very different from Katie's recruiting experience and Presley's recruiting experience. Back when Katie was going through, they started recruiting kids and trying to get them to commit when they were in 6th grade.
When they were wearing pull-ups.
Remember having a conversation with a coach. They're like, well, we'd like for Katie to do this. I'm like, she's in 7th grade. She's never even stepped on a middle school softball field. How could you say you want her to make it? I don't even know if she's going to be playing softball by the time she gets in high school. I said, are you kidding me? And so it's just unbelievable. One of the best things that they did was change those recruiting rules because it was getting just absolutely insane. I have no idea. I mean, how do you even determine whether a 7th grader, what that athlete's going to look like when they're 18? It's just a good friend of mine. I tell another story. Richard Shea, who runs the Birmingham Thunderbolts, told me one time, he said, Burt, the best player that I had ever seen on a softball field till to this day, this was a couple years ago, when she turned 16, her entire focus in life took a 180. She quit softball. She was only interested in boys. And he said it is unbelievable, and because that's what we're talking about. We're saying that, how could you even make the decision? So the one thing that I would tell 2027 parents is just like I said earlier when you asked the question, just chill out. It's going to be okay. Enjoy the process. Go to camps. If you're invited to camps, if you talk to your club coach and they've said to anybody, it doesn't matter. Once again, from JUCO all the way up to Oklahoma. If your coach has said, "Hey, look, so and so, would like for you to go to a camp," then get your rear end of that camp. Go places. Figure things out. It's really condensed now. The one thing I wish I'd have done different with Presley is I wish we would have gone and explored places sooner, because now we got in a situation where we weren't really sure who was interested and who wasn't interested on September 1st. So it was a mad dash to figure things out. And she played volleyball too, so it made it very difficult.
Yeah.
So I think that people really need to start thinking earlier and having conversations with their kids. First of all, if you're a freshman in high school right now and you know what you want to do with your life, and you're a softball player, then the first conversation that you should have as a parent with that child is to say, all right, so this is what you want to do. What are the best schools to go there? What are the easiest schools to get in to go there? What are the most expensive schools and what are the cheapest schools? And have you a list of about 20 schools. And over time, when you're playing softball and you're going through things, let's start narrowing those schools down to which schools have softball teams. What level, softball team. You know what? If you've decided when you're 12 years old that you want to be an aerospace engineer, then I can tell you what, University of Alabama Huntsville needs to be number one.
I knew right off the bat. Yep.
and hey, let me just tell you something. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're JUCO D3. They're a D2 school, and they have the highest hire rate with aerospace engineers at the highest salary of anywhere in the country. So guess what? If you're a softball player and that's what you want to do, and that's what you want to do, then University of Alabama Huntsville should be on your list, be number one on your list. Doesn't matter. I don't care if you could play at Oklahoma. You're not going to play. It's changing, but the fact is you're still not going to make a living playing professional softball. Last I checked,
aerospace engineer, that's for sure.
Last I checked, you're not going to sign a $200 million contract as an outfielder in the professional softball league. So what that means is you're going to make your money in a different way. And so you need to focus your efforts on that and figure out from there, okay, well then how can I get there through softball to create enough revenue, if that makes sense. So don't get all bogged down in the fact that, I want to play, for Auburn or for Oklahoma, if there's a better school that fits what your career goals are, it doesn't matter what division they are. And it may actually, turn out better for you, that you may get more money and be able to graduate from there with no debt
Yes.
and then have a career. And so people get all bent out of shape about September 1st and Division 1 and Power 4 and all this stuff. And I'm just telling you, parents, that is not important. What is important is your child's education. And what's important is getting as much of your child's education paid for at the place where they are going to, in the area where they're going to spend all their life in their career, and get them there. I can't tell you how many folks that I've had conversations with. Oh, well, my kid has a chance to go to a Power 4, but they're limited on what they could give you. But I've got she's got a full ride to a D2, and I'm like, why are we having this conversation? Go play D2. Graduate with no debt. That's what it's going to be all about, because in 4 years, it's going to be cool to say you play college softball, but nobody's really cares if you're playing college softball in 5 years from now. It's going to matter in your pocketbook about what it's going to be. But once again, chill out. If you don't get calls on September 1st, that doesn't matter. Last I checked, my Twitter's loaded up just like y'all's are. There are people signing, Power 4 right now that are in the 2026 class. So they're fixing to be seniors in high school. So it doesn't matter. Just chill out and focus on where you need to be. And the one other thing I'll leave you with that I promise you that you probably are going to say the same verbiage, and you've said the same verbiage to your athletes in the past too. It's the same that Katie was recommended, is go places, visit schools, and whatever feels like home, that's where you need to be. You need to, when you pick a school, you shouldn't look at the football stands and see if they've got 100,000 people in them on Saturday afternoon. That's not important. You're going there to get an education and play softball. So what happens on the football field? Hey, look, I got news for you. You can go anywhere and still go to your favorite football place on a Saturday afternoon with 100,000 of your friends, and it doesn't matter what school you're playing softball at. But that doesn't matter for your softball career. What matters for your softball career is if I would go to that school and be happy at that school if I was not playing softball.
Are you sure we're not related?
I know.
Like,
I'm telling
I feel like you might be my long lost brother my parents didn't tell me about or something. Maybe we were twins and separated at birth. I don't know.
When Katie was going through the process, we went to great lengths to visit a lot of schools. And one of the first ones she went to was Troy, and she really liked Troy, and she had a lot of good things to say about Troy. And we went to Power 4 schools, we went to D2 schools, we really ran the gamut. And finally, I asked her after we'd played around with it for a while. Every time she would come back and I'd say, well, what did you think about it? It's all right. I mean, I liked it, but it wasn't Troy. And so after about the 14th time of me spending $200 or $300 on these camps, and her coming back and saying, yeah, you know what, it is nice. The coaches were nice, but it just wasn't Troy. I said, well, you ever thought about maybe it's time to just stop going to these places and just call Troy and say, hey, look, Coach Mullins, I think that Troy's a place for me, because Katie had found a home in Troy. She went there and she knew, she was like, this is where I want to be, whether I'm playing softball or not. And that's what you got to do.
Absolutely.
Presley was a lot the same way. Presley had a lot of people looking at her. A lot of people would say, well, South Alabama is home for Presley. South Alabama just felt right for her, whether she was playing softball or not. My son had offers to play baseball at the Division 1, the Division 2, and the Division 3 level. He chose Division 3 because it just felt right to him. And with all my kids, that doesn't matter. In my family, we love Auburn and Georgia. But the fact is it doesn't matter where you're at. If you want to go to Auburn, well, then we'll go to Auburn. on Saturday afternoon and with 100,000 people. If you want to go watch a Georgia game, we can do that too. It doesn't matter if you're going to Birmingham Southern or Detroit or South Alabama or Southern Union. It doesn't matter. We can always go watch a football game.
Yeah, I love that because, that's one of the things that I've coached at the JUCO level, I've coached at D2, I've coached at Division 1, and to be honest with you, each one of those have things that I really love about it. I wish I could take what's best from each one of those and put it in one, and that would be like probably the only softball God's going to let in heaven because there's too many crazies.
Correct.
But if you could take the best from all of those levels, I would say that would be like the perfect setting for it. And one of the things that I just love to share to hear from it, and I'm sharing probably more mine, and then you can input anything you want to, is, my daughter had a very unique experience because I knew all of the people that were recruiting her. It was probably harder on me because I just had to keep my mouth shut and let her go through the process because people change, things change, all that kind of stuff. And I knew a lot of them as adversaries that I coached against and all that kind of stuff. So I had to really let her go through the process. And I felt like probably more than most, she was very well educated in what to expect in the recruiting process because number one, she'd been on a lot of recruiting trips because she was a host of a lot of recruiting trips. So, she heard all the horror stories and good stories from all the different athletes that I recruited from. But what really amazed me when it was all said and done, because I just let her be hers. I talked, I'd listen, I'd ask her questions, we'd go to trips, we'd do all that stuff. It really surprised me. And in the middle of the process, when we were in that September, October time, it surprised me when all of a sudden I'm like, why are you stressed out? Like, I don't understand why you're stressed out because you know all this. And I'm thinking, when I said that, I'm like, because she's 16 and people are asking her to choose where she's going to school. And she said, and when it was over and she made her decision, she looked straight at me and she says, I got so stressed out because everybody had something to say about my recruiting process to me. And I was like, did that come from me? And she's like, no, you were the only one not putting pressure. She's like, you're the only one that grounded me. She's like, and everybody wanted to talk about it. And I didn't want to talk about it. Like, this was mine. I want you to leave me alone, get out of my head. And I was like, okay. And I think the biggest surprise for me was as she was slated to take 5 trips. She ended up saying no to one early off because she just is like, look, it's just too far from home. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste your money. And I was really big on the fact with her of saying, look, everything has a trickle down effect. So you're not taking trips just to take trips because those people have families. Those people have other athletes that the school that you might just be taking a trip to take a trip, that's somebody's number one school. And if they're putting that person off waiting on you, that's not fair to that athlete. So I want you to be honest with these people. And so she was very good in that process. But, her last trip, which ended up being Arkansas, in my mind, I felt like that was like in her top 3 the whole time. And she had some great options, but every time, and literally she was like, looked at me the 4 or 5 days before Arkansas and said, I know I'm going to Arkansas. I feel like I'm going to Arkansas. I've been there. I've done that. I like it. I feel like I'm trying to talk myself out of it. And I'm like, well, you never try to talk yourself out of something. And literally that's the last conversation we had. In her mind, she was committing on her trip when she went there. And she came into me on Monday after a trip that we had taken. And every school she went to, she's like, I can see myself playing here. Like, it just kept getting more and more confusing for her. She came in on Monday. I'm at work. She was going to work. She's like, I did a thing today. I'm like, what'd you do? And she's like, I committed. I'm like, what? And I did. I called Arkansas. I'm going to Arkansas. I said, I thought you were going to commit on your trip. She's like, I'm tired of putting it off. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going. And I was like, okay, well, you know what you've got to do. She's like, already done. Called all the other schools and I already told them thank you. She's like, I'm done. And I was like, what made your final decision? And she said, Mom, I kept praying, God, just give me that final sign. Like, I feel like I know, but these are huge decisions. I'm turning down incredible schools if I make this decision. And she said, you know that song? And I still don't know it. I've never even heard it. But when you know, I know Katie will know it. It's some young kid song. When you know, she's like, I kept praying to God that whole morning driving to school. She's like, that song came on 2 times before I got to school. She goes, I go to lunch with my friends and that song came on. She goes, I go to come to work and that song comes on, and she's like, "Okay, God, I asked for the sign. I know." She goes, so I called Courtney and said, "I'm coming." She goes, "First of all, I text Courtney and said, 'Can I call you?'" She's like, Courtney said, "Yeah, give me a minute." And she gets on the phone and she said, "What's up, Macy?" And she's like, "I'm committing." She's like, "What? I thought you were calling and telling me you weren't." She's like, "You haven't even been on the trip yet." She's like, "I've been to 2 or 3 camps. I've developed my relationship. I know where I want to play." So I think what surprised me is the pressure that your kid can feel. And as a parent, it's really important that you're not the person putting the pressure on them. You need to be that sounding board, and you need to be the one that also, not just a sounding board, also make sure they know what they're hearing, because there's a lot of excitement in a recruiting trip. There's a lot of excitement around that September 1 and on call. I was never on the phone on any of them, but I just listened to all of them for her, so that I just took notes, and then let her have them and said, "Here you go." So that she had follow-up questions, and I heard what they were saying so she could say, "Oh, they say I'm gonna do this." No, that's not what they said. This is what they said, you know?
You're teaching a lot of stuff too, like what we talked about, just life skills. And I know this isn't, this is, softball themed, but I mean that's really, in my mind, in my worldview, I guess that's the goal of parenting, is what you're talking about, is training your kids to make their own decisions. And I think that's one of the big things that people get bent out of shape about. There, especially now around September 1st. Oh well, my kid didn't get a call, but this kid did. Everything. You know what? You got to worry about you. It doesn't matter what's going on around you. All that stuff is noise. They just need to be focused on them. And from a parent perspective, you got to remember, you're not the one going away from home for the first time. You're not the one that's going to be, playing softball through the weekends in the fall. It's your kid that's going to do it. And I think that parents, you just go back to the reason that they can't chill out. They can't turn their kids over to a professional coach that knows what they're doing. The reason that they get bent out of shape, during recruiting, is they don't just chill out and just focus on enjoying their kids' experience and teaching their kids that this isn't the parent's life. This isn't me going through recruiting. This is my child going through recruiting. And you got to train them and bring them up in the way that they can make those decisions for themselves, that they can, because guess what? When they get out there in the real world and there's a reorganization in their company, or something doesn't go their way, then it's not going. Your mom and dad's always going to be here. My dad always taught me. He said, "Hey, there's 2 things that you can count on in life: that your mom and daddy love you, and that the sun's going to come up tomorrow." But that's really all you can do. Then everything else, you can't worry about what's going on around you. You can just worry about what you do and what your attitude is. And you have to, as a parent, you just gotta let it go, let them do that, and then they're gonna have to live with the decisions that they make. And you just gotta hope that you train them well enough to where they can, have a prayer and get signs that they can make that decision. That when you tell them, hey, that you need to go somewhere that feels like home, that's what they do in their heart, and they make those decisions, because those are the decisions that are going to affect their lives. And as parents, you gotta let them live their life. You can't sit there and micromanage every aspect of it. You just got to chill out and enjoy it. I mean, that's that whole phrase. Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it's happened. I mean, I'm just telling you, these years that you have with your kids in high school and going through, this recruiting process, and being able to go play in these tournaments and go, to Colorado and to California and to Indianapolis and do these things that other kids would like. There's kids out there that would like to do that, but they don't ever have the opportunity to go do that.
Yep.
And then when you get to the college level, no matter what level you're at or anything like that, if you're a Division I player and you're not thankful and grateful for that opportunity that you got to play Division I softball, just remember there's a bunch of D2s, D3s, and JUCO players that love to have your spot.
Yep.
And the same thing goes down if you're D2 or if you're NAI or that's why it's so important for people to understand that any opportunity to play at the next level is a blessing. It's just unbelievable.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think To me, everything that you're speaking for me, and I'm glad that we work for a company that we can talk about it. It comes down to faith. I mean, I care more that my daughter knows Jesus than anything she ever does on the softball field. And like I'm an older mom, obviously. I have a 16-year or oh, excuse me, 17-year-old running around now. And I think the thing that changed so much for me with her as opposed to even with my son is I'm an older parent, and I told her every day I wake up, I want to make sure I give you everything I absolutely can because I don't know if I'll be here forever. So it's my job to invest in you as much as I can every day, whether that's to irritate you or to pour advice into you, whatever that is. And I think, somebody once said to me, and I think Katie's heard me say it a ton of times, is we are only guaranteed 18, and we're not even guaranteed, but we're only promised 18 summers with our kids. And I'm staring at my last one. And I think when you think about it, then it puts everything in perspective because I don't know about you, but 18 flies by fast. I certainly remember Christmas taking a long time when I was a kid, and now I'm like, dang, I just paid it off. Here we go again. So
100%.
I think with those things, I think that's what I do. And the advice that you gave, this is probably going to end up being one of my favorite podcasts that we put out because parents need to hear it. They need to hear it. And parents, I think sometimes they're afraid to do it and they're like, oh, it's not me. But I have seen so many recruiting stories, and there's really only the same ending. It's the same endings. It's just different names and different chapters from different books to get plugged in there. So I can't thank you enough for sharing your wisdom. Like I said, I think you might be my long lost twin. I got some daddy might have some explaining to do.
I'm always in that, Carrie. You'll say things, and I'm like, my dad did the same thing. It is funny that always
Absolutely.
comes out,
Well,
but
thank you for sharing it, and I hope to meet you in person. I'm gonna have to come down. Macy and I were talking about it. We're like, we got to come down, and I guess I could call her Presley and not Peanut. See Peanut plays.
peanuts. We all
Well,
do.
and I think there's even so much like when I heard you say like all the different levels. I coached at a JUCO here in Mississippi, and I'll say it: we beat Memphis. That's a division.
Yeah,
team.
right.
You know, probably shouldn't say it since you like Auburn, but Northwest Florida State, who won the
Yeah.
championship, beat Auburn. So it's not just talent. A lot of times it's who you know, what you know, the right timing, the right fit. There's just so much that gets played into it.
My kids have heard me say it over and over again. I mean, I'll just be clear. I'm not really a baseball fan, and I'm not really a softball fan. I tolerate it for the most part. My kids love it. And so, I mean, my kids love it. So that's why, I mean, and that probably anybody that knows me or has heard of me, they're gonna be like, that guy really doesn't really, no, I really don't like softball. I mean, I know a lot about it now, because I've been around it so much. But I'm a football guy. And I love football because, realistically in football, the biggest, strongest, and fastest team wins about 99% of the time. You see upsets from time to time, but they're few and far between.
Yep.
App State doesn't go to Michigan and beat them, every year. That's a one-off thing. But in baseball, softball,
Rare.
yeah, baseball and softball, it's all bets are off. Anybody can beat anybody any given time. Softball has a little bit of an advantage if you have a dominant arm, like the girl at Texas Tech,
Yeah.
the girl at Tennessee that can throw 100 miles an hour. I mean, there's always that's sort of the great equalizer with softball that you don't necessarily have with baseball. But the thing is to your point, if you just look at it, and that's why I said, look, just be blessed that you have the opportunity anywhere. A lot of those JUCO players are JUCOs for a reason, and it may not have anything to do with anything that goes on the softball field. So I can promise you that there are JUCO players out there that are every bit as talented as players on Oklahoma's roster right now.
Yeah.
There is no question in my mind. The same thing goes for those others, because there are people out there that are a lot smarter than me that figured out that thing, the example I was using about aerospace. There's kids out there on teams that you've never even heard of that are every bit as good as anybody that you've ever seen, and they're there for a specific reason. It may be because they've got a parent that's sick and they want to be closer to home. It may be because this school has a specific has a great business school or something like that, and that's what they want to do. There's always reasons for that. But there are talented players at every level that can at any given time beat beat the best players in the country. And that's why y'all love softball. That's why my buddy that coaches baseball, he just loves baseball because he says, "Hey, look, I don't have to have the most talented team because I can beat them, for this or that right there." Well, you can't say that on a football field, and that's why football is a lot simpler. I'm a simple guy, so I think that the football makes more sense to me. But
Yeah.
you're 100% correct about softball. I mean, it's why the mid majors always give the Power Fives fits.
Fun for their
I
money.
mean, it's why you have schools out there like I always thought Southwest Louisiana is just amazing. That is an amazing softball team.
Yep, absolutely.
And at any given time they could beat anybody in the country.
I agree. Well, thank you so much for spending your morning. I'm glad your flight got delayed. This was a special treat.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Voices from the Field, presented by Extra Inning Softball. Don't forget to follow us on social media, subscribe to us on Spotify, and visit our website at extrainningsoftball.com for more stories, rankings, and updates from around the game. We'll see you guys next week.